There's a quiet tension that lives beneath the surface of power, a fragile silence that exists just before control slips through human hands. In Mutiny, 2026, that silence is not broken by noise, but by decision. A single fracture in loyalty that ripples outward like a shock wave through steel, command, and conscience. This is not merely a story of rebellion. It is a study of pressure, of systems built on hierarchy, and of what happens when the human mind begins to question the very structure that defines its purpose. At its core, the film positions itself not just as a narrative experience, but as a calculated industrial product, a high-stakes investment in both emotional engagement and global market appeal. With a production budget estimated at around $120 to $140 million approximate, Mutiny represents a significant financial gamble, particularly within the action drama genre that increasingly demands both spectacle and psychological depth. Investors here are not just funding explosions or attention. They are funding attention, retention, and long-term streaming value across Tier 1 markets. The premise unfolds within a tightly controlled environment, a naval command structure where discipline is currency and obedience is survival. But like any complex system, the film introduces instability through human variables: doubt, fear, ambition, and moral conflict. The narrative begins with a seemingly routine mission, engineered with precision and authority, yet beneath the structure exterior lies an invisible buildup of psychological pressure. This duality, system versus individual, becomes a central axis around which the entire film rotates. From an industry standpoint, Mutiny is a strategic alignment of multiple cinematic priorities. It leverages the proven ROI strength of contained thrillers, films that minimize location costs while maximizing tension density, while simultaneously investing in high-end visual execution to maintain theatrical appeal. This balance reflects a broader shift in Hollywood economics, where mid to high-budget films must justify their existence not only through box office returns, but through downstream monetization channels like streaming platforms, international licensing, and digital rentals. What makes this film particularly compelling as a financial case study is its positioning within the controlled chaos subgenre. These are films where the environment itself becomes a character, a closed system that amplifies every decision. This allows producers to reduce logistical sprawl while increasing narrative intensity, effectively improving cost efficiency per minute of engagement. In simple terms, every dollar spent is engineered to generate maximum psychological return. Technologically, the film embraces modern digital cinematography workflows, likely relying on high-resolution camera systems and advanced color grading pipelines to create a visual language that feels both sterile and suffocating. The use of confined spaces, controlled lighting, and precision blocking is not accidental. It is a deliberate engineering choice designed to guide viewer attention and emotional response. This is where cinema becomes software, a programmed experience where each frame serves a calculated purpose. The creative gamble, however, lies in tone. Mutiny is not designed to be loud or overly theatrical. Instead, it leans into restraint, into the slow build of unease. This is a risky move in a market that often rewards immediate stimulation, but it is also a calculated risk aimed at attracting a more intellectually engaged audience, one that values psychological complexity, ethical dilemmas, and layered storytelling. This audience, importantly, overlaps strongly with higher-value advertiser segments, including finance, technology, and education sectors. As we move deeper into the narrative, the film introduces its central conflict not as an external threat, but as an internal collapse. Orders begin to feel ambiguous. Authority begins to feel questionable. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the chain of command begins to fracture. This is where the film's true strength emerges, not in action, but in interpretation. Every decision carries weight. Every hesitation carries consequence, and every character becomes both participant and observer in a system that is beginning to fail. From a storytelling architecture perspective, the opening act functions like a start of an ITS early phase, structured, optimistic, and seemingly stable. The mission is the product, the crew is the team, and the commanding officer is the CEO. But as with many startups, unseen pressures begin to surface. Misalignment, communication breakdowns, and conflicting incentives. The film uses this analogy subtly, allowing viewers to experience the unraveling not just as a story, but as a familiar pattern of organizational stress. What is particularly effective here is the film's ability to translate abstract concepts like trust, authority, and control into tangible cinematic experiences. Through pacing, silence, and visual framing, it allows the audience to feel the tension rather than simply observe it. This is a key element of high-value storytelling. The transformation of intangible psychological states into measurable viewer engagement. Ultimately, Mutiny presents itself as more than a film. It is an exploration of system failure under human pressure. It asks a simple but deeply unsettling question. What happens when a structure is designed to maintain or to begin to lose the trust of the individuals within them? And more importantly, what does it cost emotionally, morally, and financially when that trust is broken? As the film transitions from its carefully constructed opening into the first operational phase of its narrative, the structure begins to resemble a live system moving from design into execution. The mission that once felt stable now enters its active cycle, where theoretical control is tested against real human behavior. This is where Mutiny begins to operate like a startup, leaving the safety of planning and entering the volatile terrain of real-world deployment, where every decision has immediate consequences and every mistake compounds over time. The first half of the story is engineered with deliberate pacing, introducing the crew not just as characters, but as functional components within a hierarchical system. Each individual represents a role with defined responsibilities, much like departments within an organization. The commanding officer acts as centralized authority, issuing directives with precision, while subordinates execute tasks with mechanical discipline. On the surface, everything operates with efficiency, creating the illusion of stability and control. But beneath this operational smoothness lies a subtle inefficiency, a misalignment between instruction and interpretation. Orders begin to carry ambiguity, not because they are unclear, but because the context surrounding them starts to shift. This is where the film cleverly introduces what could be described as narrative friction, small inconsistencies that gradually accumulate, creating tension without overt disruption. From a storytelling perspective, this is equivalent to early-stage product bugs that do not immediately crash the system but slowly erode user confidence. The pacing here is crucial. Instead of rushing toward conflict, the film invests in building emotional capital. Each interaction, each exchange of dialogue, adds to the audience's psychological investment. This is the cinematic equivalent of customer acquisition. The film is earning the viewer's attention through consistency and credibility. By the time the first signs of instability become visible, the audience is already deeply embedded within the system, making the impact far more effective. One of the most effective techniques used in this phase is a controlled use of silence. Conversations are often brief, measured, and incomplete, forcing both the characters and the audience to interpret what is left unsaid. This creates a layered communication environment where meaning is not just delivered, but constructed. In economic terms, this can be seen as information asymmetry, where not all participants have access to the same data, leading to uncertainty and strategic hesitation. As the mission progresses, the film introduces minor disruptions, small deviations from expected outcomes. These are not dramatic failures, but subtle irregularities that begin to challenge the crew's confidence in their command structure. A delayed response, a questionable directive, a moment of hesitation. Each of these elements acts as a micro-trigger, gradually shifting the emotional equilibrium of the system. This is where the narrative begins to transition from stability to vulnerability. From a structural perspective, this phase mirrors the R&D and prototyping stage of startup. The mission itself is the product being tested, while the crew's responses act as feedback loops. The film continuously gathers and processes its data through character reactions, adjusting the narrative trajectory in real time. This dynamic approach keeps the audience engaged, as the story feels less like a predetermined path and more like an evolving system. What makes this particularly compelling is how the film manages risk distribution. Instead of concentrating tension in a single moment, it spreads it across multiple small events, each contributing to a growing sense of unease. This approach not only sustains engagement, but also increases the perceived stakes without requiring large-scale action sequences. From a production standpoint, this is a highly efficient use of resources, maximizing emotional output while minimizing physical expenditure. The relationships between characters also begin to shift subtly. Trust, which initially functioned as a given, now becomes a variable. Characters start to question not just the orders they receive, but the intentions behind them. This introduces a layer of psychological complexity that elevates the narrative beyond a simple chain of command story. It becomes a study of perception, how individuals interpret authority under pressure. Importantly, the film does not immediately validate these doubts. Instead, it allows ambiguity to persist, creating a space where multiple interpretations can coexist. This is a sophisticated storytelling strategy, as it mirrors real-world decision-making environments where clarity is often unavailable. The audience, like the characters, is forced to operate under uncertainty, increasing immersion and cognitive engagement. As we approach the midpoint of the first half, the system begins to show visible signs of strain. Communication becomes less fluid, reactions become more cautious, and the once seamless flow of operations starts to fragment. This is the tipping point where the narrative shifts from controlled execution to emerging conflict. The groundwork has been laid, the emotional investment secured, and the first cracks in the system are now impossible to ignore. In essence, the first half of Mutiny is not about action, but about accumulation. It accumulates tension, doubt, and psychological weight, preparing the audience for the eventual rupture that will define the second half. By the time this phase concludes, the system is no longer stable. It is simply waiting for the moment when internal pressure finally forces it to break. As the narrative crosses its midpoint, the system that once functioned with disciplined precision now begins to behave unpredictably, almost like a machine operating beyond its tolerance threshold. The second half of Mutiny transforms the earlier buildup of tension into active instability, where every decision carries amplified consequences. What was once subtle doubt now evolves into visible fracture, and the film begins converting its accumulated emotional capital into high-stakes engagement. This is the moment where narrative risk starts paying out. The turning point is not explosive, but decisive. A single act of defiance, measured, controlled, yet irreversible, disrupts the chain of command. This moment functions as the film's product launch, where all prior investment in character psychology and narrative tension is released into the open. The audience is no longer observing potential conflict. They are now fully immersed in its execution. From a structural standpoint, this is where the film tests its emotional product-market fit. What follows is a recalibration of power. Authority, once centralized, becomes contested territory. The commanding structure begins to dissolve into competing interpretations of duty and morality. Some characters align with order, others with resistance, and a few remain suspended in uncertainty, calculating their next move. This fragmentation mirrors market competition, multiple forces vying for control within a limited environment, each driven by its own logic and survival instinct. The pacing shifts noticeably here. Where the first half was deliberate and measured, the second half adopts a tighter, more reactive rhythm. Scenes become shorter, interactions sharper, and decisions more immediate. This acceleration reflects a system under stress, where time itself becomes a scarce resource. In financial terms, this is a compression phase, where returns must be realized quickly before the system collapses entirely. One of the film's most effective strategies in this phase is its use of consequence cascading. Each action triggers a chain reaction, forcing characters to continuously adapt to new variables. There is no reset, no return to stability, only forward motion. This creates a sense of inevitability, as if the narrative itself has entered a feedback loop where escalation is the only possible outcome. The emotional stakes also deepen significantly. Characters who once operated within defined roles now confront the weight of their decisions on a personal level. Loyalty becomes a liability, obedience becomes a question, and survival becomes a negotiation. The film examines how individuals respond when their internal moral framework collides with external authority. This is where psychological tension converts into emotional resonance, a key driver of audience retention. Importantly, the film maintains its commitment to ambiguity. Even as conflict intensifies, it avoids presenting clear heroes or villains. Instead, it positions each character within a spectrum of justification, allowing the audience to interpret motivations rather than accept them. This approach enhances engagement by encouraging active analysis, turning viewers into participants in the narrative rather than passive observers. Visually and structurally, the environment begins to feel more restrictive. Spaces that once appeared functional now feel confining, almost oppressive. The camera lingers longer, movements become more deliberate, and the sense of enclosure intensifies. This is not accidental. It is a calculated design choice that reinforces the psychological state of the characters. The system is closing in both physically and emotionally. As the conflict escalates, the film introduces moments of strategic pause, brief intervals where characters reassess their positions. These pauses are critical, as they provide contrast to surrounding intensity and allow the audience to process the unfolding events. In narrative economics, these moments act as value consolidation points, ensuring that the emotional impact remains coherent and sustained. The climax approaches not as a sudden explosion, but as a convergence of accumulated decisions. Every choice made in the first half, every hesitation, every doubt, now feeds into a single, unavoidable outcome. This is where the film demonstrates payoff efficiency, the ability to convert narrative setup into meaningful resolution without excess or redundancy. When the final confrontation unfolds, it is less about victory and more about consequence. The system does not simply break. It reveals its underlying fragility. Authority is redefined, trust is recalibrated, and the cost of rebellion becomes fully visible. The film resists the temptation to provide clean closure, instead leaving traces of ambiguity that extend beyond the final frame. In essence, the second half of Mutiny operates as a release phase, where all prior investment, emotional, psychological, and structural, is converted into audience impact. It is a study in how tension, when carefully accumulated, can be deployed with precision to create a narrative that feels both inevitable and deeply human. Beneath the external structure of orders, ranks, and operational discipline, Mutiny reveals itself as a deeply psychological system, one where every decision is less about protocol and more about internal negotiation. The characters are not simply reacting to events. They are constantly calculating risk, weighing consequence, and navigating the invisible cost of choice. This transforms a film into a study of behavioral economics, where human emotion becomes the most volatile variable in an otherwise controlled environment. At the center of this system stands a commanding officer, a figure defined not just by authority, but by the burden of decision-making under uncertainty. Leadership here is not portrayed as power, but as pressure, the continuous responsibility to act with incomplete information while maintaining the illusion of control. This reflects a classic economic dilemma, the cost of decisive action versus the cost of hesitation. Every command issued carries both immediate operational impact and long-term psychological consequences. What makes this character particularly compelling is the tension between rational strategy and emotional instinct. On one hand, the leader must adhere to protocol, ensuring that decisions align with institutional expectations. On the other, there is an underlying awareness that rigid adherence may lead to failure. This internal conflict creates a form of cognitive dissonance, where two competing belief systems, duty and doubt, coexist within the same mind. The film carefully explores how this dissonance influences behavior, often leading to decisions that are logically sound but emotionally fragile. Opposing this authority is the emerging force of dissent. Characters who begin to question not just the decisions being made, but the framework that justifies them. Their actions are not driven by impulsive rebellion, but by a calculated reassessment of risk. In economic terms, they are reevaluating the expected value of obedience versus defiance. When the perceived cost of compliance exceeds the risk of resistance, the system begins to destabilize. This shift is gradual and deeply psychological. Doubt does not appear suddenly. It accumulates through observation, experience, and subtle inconsistencies. Characters begin to notice patterns, small deviations that challenge their trust in the system. These observations act as data points, feeding into an internal model that continuously updates their perception of reality. The film uses this process to illustrate how belief systems are not fixed, but dynamically constructed. One of the most fascinating aspects of the psychological landscape is the role of trust as a form of currency. In the early stages, trust flows freely, enabling efficient cooperation and smooth execution. But as uncertainty increases, trust becomes scarce, and its value rises dramatically. Characters begin to conserve it, distribute it selectively, and question its validity. This shift mirrors financial markets, where confidence can drive growth or trigger collapse. The film also examines the concept of moral risk, the idea that individuals may act differently when they're insulated from the consequences of their actions. Within the hierarchy, those at higher levels possess greater decision-making power, but are often removed from the immediate impact of those decisions. This creates a disconnect between authority and accountability, forcing lower-ranking individuals to confront the real-world implications of choices they did not make. Trauma response plays a subtle but significant role in shaping behavior. Under prolonged stress, characters begin to exhibit patterns of hypervigilance, emotional withdrawal, or impulsive action. These responses are not portrayed as weaknesses, but as adaptive mechanisms, ways in which the human mind attempts to maintain stability in an unstable environment. The film treats these responses with nuance, acknowledging their complexity, without reducing them to simple character traits. Another critical dimension is the opportunity cost of conscience. Every character faces moments where ethical considerations conflict with practical outcomes. Choosing to act morally may result in immediate loss of position, safety, or control, while choosing pragmatism may preserve stability at the expense of personal integrity. The film does not offer easy answers, instead presenting these dilemmas as ongoing negotiations within the human psyche. Communication breakdown further amplifies these psychological tensions. As trust erodes, information becomes fragmented, delayed, or distorted. Characters begin to rely more on inference than on direct communication, increasing the likelihood of misinterpretation. This creates a feedback loop where uncertainty generates more uncertainty, accelerating the system's descent into instability. What ultimately emerges is a portrait of human behavior under pressure, a complex interplay of logic, emotion, and survival instinct. The film demonstrates that systems do not fail solely because of external forces, but because of internal fractures that grow over time. These fractures are not always visible, but they are always present, waiting for the right conditions to surface. In essence, Mutiny uses its characters as living models of decision-making under constraint. It invites the audience to examine not just what choices are made, but why they are made and at what cost. By framing psychology through the lens of economics, the film transforms individual behavior into a measurable, analyzable system, one that reflects both the strength and fragility of the human mind. When we move into financial anatomy of Mutiny, the film reveals itself not just as a narrative, but as a carefully structured capital deployment strategy, a calculated allocation of resources designed to maximize both emotional impact and long-term revenue streams. With an estimated production budget in the range of $120 to $140 million approximate, this project sits in a critical bracket. Too large to rely solely on niche appeal, yet not massive enough to absorb inefficiency. Every dollar here is expected to perform. The budget itself appears to be distributed with a strong emphasis on controlled environments and performance-driven storytelling. Unlike sprawling action franchises that allocate significant capital to large-scale CGI and multiple global locations, Mutiny invests in contained sets, high-end production design, and precision cinematography. This strategic allocation reduces logistical overhead while increasing the density of on-screen tension, effectively improving cost per minute of engagement. From an EBITDA-style perspective, the film's financial success depends heavily on its ability to maintain disciplined spending while maximizing downstream monetization. The break-even point for a film in this range typically sits around 2.5x its production budget, placing Mutiny's required global box office performance somewhere in the $300 to $350 million approximate range. However, in today's hybrid distribution landscape, theatrical revenue is only one component of a much larger financial ecosystem. Marketing expenditure plays a crucial role here, often accounting for an additional $70 to $100 million approximate, depending on the scale of the global campaign. This includes trailer production, digital advertising, influencer partnerships, and international promotional tours. The marketing strategy for a film like Mutiny is likely to emphasize intellectual tension over spectacle, positioning the film as a premium psychological experience rather than a conventional action blockbuster. This targeting aligns with higher value audience segments that attract finance, technology, and education advertisers. Distribution strategy further shapes the film's ROI profile. A wide theatrical release in Tier 1 markets, such as the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia provides the initial revenue surge, while international markets contribute incremental growth. However, the real long-term value lies in post-theatrical windows, streaming rights, digital rentals, and licensing agreements. Platforms are increasingly willing to pay premium rates for content that demonstrates strong engagement metrics and repeat viewing potential. Streaming economics, in particular, transform the way ROI is calculated. Instead of relying solely on ticket sales, the film's value is assessed based on its ability to retain subscribers and drive platform engagement. A film like Mutiny, with its layered narrative and psychological depth, is well positioned to perform strongly in this environment, as it encourages multiple viewings and sustained discussion, key drivers of streaming lifetime value. Another important revenue stream comes from international licensing and syndication. Films that maintain a universal thematic core, such as authority, trust, and moral conflict, tend to travel well across cultural boundaries. This increases their global monetization potential, allowing distributors to secure deals in multiple territories without significant localization costs. In financial terms, this enhances the film's scalability. Brand integrations and merchandising, while less central to a film of this tone, still contribute to the overall revenue ecosystem. Strategic partnerships with technology or lifestyle brands can provide additional funding during production, while also expanding the film's marketing reach. Even subtle integrations can offset costs, effectively reducing the net investment required from primary financiers. Risk management is a defining factor in the film's financial strategy. By focusing on a contained setting and performance-driven narrative, the production minimizes exposure to unpredictable variables such as weather, large-scale logistics, and extensive visual effects pipelines. This reduces the likelihood of budget overruns, ensuring that the project remains within its planned financial boundaries. However, the film's greatest financial risk lies in its tonal positioning. By prioritizing psychological depth over immediate spectacle, Mutiny targets a more selective audience. While this can lead to higher engagement and stronger word of mouth, it also introduces uncertainty in opening weekend performance, a critical metric for theatrical success. This is a calculated trade-off, balancing short-term volatility against long-term value. From an investor's perspective, the film represents a portfolio diversification strategy within the studio's slate. It complements larger franchise projects by offering a different type of return profile, one that may not deliver explosive box office numbers, but provides steady, sustained revenue through multiple channels. This diversification is essential for maintaining overall financial stability in an increasingly unpredictable market. Ultimately, the financial story of Mutiny is one of precision and balance. It is a project that seeks to optimize every aspect of its economic model, from budget allocation and marketing strategy to distribution and long-term monetization. It demonstrates how modern cinema is not just about storytelling, but about building a multi-layered financial ecosystem where art, technology, and capital work together to generate both emotional and economic returns. When we examine Mutiny through the lens of filmmaking technology, the film reveals itself as a meticulously engineered system where hardware and software are not just tools, but active contributors to emotional storytelling. Every visual decision is rooted in a technological framework designed to translate psychological tension into measurable sensory experience. This is where cinema evolves into a form of applied engineering, a convergence of optics, data, and human perception. At the core of this system is the choice of camera technology. A film operating at this budget level is likely to utilize high-end digital cinema cameras, such as the ARRI Alexa LF or similar large-format systems, known for their exceptional dynamic range and color fidelity. These cameras allow filmmakers to capture subtle variations in light and texture, which is critical in a story that relies heavily on atmosphere rather than spectacle. The ability to preserve detail in both shadows and highlights ensures that no emotional nuance is lost in the frame. Lens selection further refines its visual language. The use of prime lenses with controlled focal lengths allows for precise composition, enabling filmmakers to guide viewer attention with surgical accuracy. In confined environments, wider lenses can exaggerate spatial relationships, making spaces feel both expansive and claustrophobic at the same time. This duality is essential for reinforcing the film's thematic tension. the idea that control and confinement can coexist within the same frame. Lighting design plays a central role in shaping the film's psychological tone. Instead of relying on high-intensity theatrical lighting, Mutiny appears to favor low-key setups with carefully controlled sources. Practical lights, those integrated into the environment, are used to create a sense of realism, while subtle adjustments in color temperature introduce emotional subtext. Cooler tones may signal detachment and control, while warmer hues suggest vulnerability or instability. This is not just aesthetic choice. It is emotional coding through light. The color grading process, likely executed in advanced software, such as DaVinci Resolve, acts as the final layer of visual refinement. Here, the raw footage is transformed into a cohesive visual identity, with adjustments made to contrast, saturation, and tonal balance. The goal is not to create artificial beauty, but to enhance the film's psychological clarity. By maintaining a restrained color palette, the film avoids distraction, allowing the audience to focus on character and narrative. Editing workflows further contribute to the film's technological sophistication. Using nonlinear editing systems like Avid Media Composer, the film's pacing is carefully constructed to mirror the internal state of its characters. Cuts are not merely transitions. They are decisions that shape the rhythm of the story. Longer takes may be used to build tension, while sharper cuts can introduce urgency. This dynamic approach ensures that the film's temporal structure aligns with its emotional trajectory. Sound technology, though often discussed separately, is deeply integrated into the visual workflow. On-set recording, combined with post-production processing in systems like Avid Pro Tools, allows for precise control over audio elements. Even in visually quiet scenes, subtle background sounds, the hum of machinery, the echo of footsteps, are engineered to enhance immersion. This integration of audio and visual data creates a unified sensory experience. One of the most notable aspects of the film's technological approach is its restraint in the use of CGI. Rather than relying on heavy digital effects, Mutiny appears to prioritize practical environments and in-camera solutions. This not only reduces post-production complexity, but also enhances authenticity. When visual effects are used, they are likely subtle and seamless, designed to support the narrative rather than dominate it. Data management and workflow efficiency are also critical components of the production process. High-resolution footage requires robust storage solutions and streamlined pipelines to ensure that data can be accessed, processed, and delivered without delay. This behind-the-scenes infrastructure is often invisible to the audience, yet plays a crucial role in maintaining production momentum and controlling costs. The integration of these technologies reflects a broader trend in modern filmmaking, the shift toward precision and optimization. Every tool, from camera to editing software, is selected not just for its capabilities, but for its ability to contribute to a cohesive system. This systems-based approach allows filmmakers to maintain control over every aspect of production, ensuring that the final product aligns with both artistic vision and financial objectives. What ultimately emerges is a film that uses technology not as spectacle, but as language. Each technical choice, from lens to lighting to edit, becomes a means of communication, conveying information that extends beyond dialogue. This is where the true power of filmmaking technology lies, in its ability to translate abstract ideas into tangible experiences. In essence, Mutiny demonstrates how modern cinema operates at the intersection of art and engineering. It is a reminder that behind every emotional moment is a network of technological decisions, each contributing to the creation of a narrative that feels both authentic and meticulously crafted. When we step behind the camera and into the operational core of Mutiny, the film reveals itself as a tightly managed industrial project where time, labor, and coordination are treated as measurable assets. Production management here is not just about keeping things organized. It is about converting time into value with minimal loss. Every hour on set carries a cost, and every delay compounds into financial pressure, making efficiency the backbone of the entire operation. At the highest level, the film operates within a clearly defined hierarchy, similar to a corporate structure. The director functions as a creative CEO, responsible for maintaining vision and alignment, while producers act as financial overseers, ensuring that the project remains within budgetary constraints. Below them, department heads, cinematography, production design, sound, and others operate as specialized units, each contributing to the overall system. This layered structure allows for both centralized decision-making and decentralized execution. Scheduling becomes one of the most critical components of this system. Unlike films that rely on multiple locations and complex logistics, Mutiny benefits from its contained environment, allowing for a more controlled shooting schedule. Scenes can be grouped by location and lighting requirements, reducing setup time and increasing shooting efficiency. This approach mirrors just-in-time production models in manufacturing, where resources are allocated precisely when needed to minimize waste. Workforce allocation is equally strategic. A film of this scale requires a highly skilled crew, but efficiency demands that each role be clearly defined and optimized. Redundancy is minimized and communication channels are streamlined to ensure that information flows quickly and accurately. This reduces the risk of misalignment, which can lead to costly reshoots or delays. In economic terms, this is about maximizing output PR labor hour. On-set logistics further highlight the importance of coordination. Equipment must be positioned, adjusted, and maintained with precision, while actors must be prepared and directed in alignment with the shooting schedule. Even minor disruptions, a delayed setup, a technical issue, can cascade into significant time losses. To mitigate this, productions often build buffer periods into their schedules, allowing for control flexibility, without compromising overall timelines. The film's reliance on a contained setting provides a significant advantage in terms of cost control. By limiting the number of locations, the production reduces transportation, accommodation, and setup expenses. This allows more resources to be allocated toward performance, design, and technical quality. It is a strategic trade-off that prioritizes depth over scale, ensuring that every element within a frame contributes meaningfully to the narrative. Leadership within this environment is not just about authority, but about alignment. The director must continuously communicate the creative vision to ensure that every department is working toward the same objective. This requires clarity, adaptability, and the ability to make quick decisions under pressure. In many ways, this mirrors executive leadership in high-stakes corporate environments, where clarity of direction is essential for maintaining operational efficiency. Risk management is embedded throughout the production process. Contingency plans are developed for potential disruptions, whether they involve technical failures, scheduling conflicts, or unforeseen external factors. By anticipating these risks, the production can respond quickly and minimize their impact. This proactive approach reduces uncertainty and helps maintain both budget and timeline integrity. Studio economics also play a crucial role in shaping production decisions. Studios evaluate projects not just on creative merit, but on their potential return on investment. This influences everything from casting choices to production scale. In the case of Mutiny, the emphasis on a contained, performance-driven narrative aligns with a strategy that seeks to balance risk and reward, delivering a high-quality product without excessive financial exposure. Time, in this context, becomes the most valuable currency. Each day of shooting represents a significant financial commitment, and delays can quickly escalate costs. This creates a constant pressure to maintain momentum, ensuring that the production moves forward efficiently. The ability to manage time effectively is often the difference between a project that stays within budget and one that exceeds it. Collaboration is the final piece of this operational puzzle. While the hierarchy provides structure, the success of the film ultimately depends on the ability of individuals to work together seamlessly. This requires trust, communication, and a shared commitment to the project's goals. When these elements align, the production operates like a well-calibrated system, capable of delivering both artistic and financial success. In essence, the production management of Mutiny demonstrates how filmmaking is as much about logistics and economics as it is about creativity. It is a complex orchestration of people, resources, and time, a system where every decision contributes to the final outcome. By treating production as a form of strategic management, the film ensures that its artistic vision is supported by a foundation of operational excellence. When Mutiny is examined through the lens of historical and scientific accuracy, the film positions itself not as a documentary, but as a disciplined interpretation of real-world systems, particularly those rooted in naval command structures and high-pressure decision environments. Its goal is not perfect replication, but credible simulation. This distinction is important, because the film operates within a space where authenticity must feel real enough to sustain immersion, even if narrative compression reshapes certain realities. The foundation of this authenticity lies in portrayal of hierarchical command. Naval systems in the real world are built on strict chains of authority, where clarity of command is essential for operational survival. The film reflects this structure with notable precision, illustrating how orders flow downward and accountability flows upward. However, it also introduces controlled deviations to explore what happens when this system encounters ambiguity, a scenario that, while dramatized, is grounded in plausible human behavior under stress. From a procedural standpoint, the film appears to draw on established military protocols, communication formats, response timing, and operational discipline. These elements are not presented in exhaustive detail, but they are embedded within the narrative in a way that feels consistent and believable. This approach mirrors a concept of simulated realism, where enough accurate detail is provided to anchor the story, while allowing flexibility for dramatic development. Scientific accuracy in this context is less about physical laws and more about system dynamics. The film explores how complex systems behave under pressure, how information flows, how decisions propagate, and how small disruptions can escalate into large-scale consequences. This aligns with principles found in systems theory, where interconnected components interact in ways that are often unpredictable. By focusing on these dynamics, the film achieves a form of intellectual realism that resonates beyond its fictional setting. One of the most compelling aspects of this approach is the treatment of uncertainty. In real-world operations, decisions are rarely made with complete information. The film captures this reality by presenting scenarios where characters must act based on partial data, conflicting signals, and time constraints. This reflects the concept of bounded rationality, the idea that decision-making is limited by the information available and the cognitive capacity of the individual. The role of consulting expertise is also worth considering. Films of this scale often engage advisors with military or technical backgrounds to ensure that key elements remain grounded in reality. While the narrative may not adhere strictly to every procedural detail, the presence of such expertise helps maintain a baseline of credibility. This is particularly important for audiences who are familiar with these systems, as it prevents the film from drifting into implausibility. Historical accuracy, while less central than procedural realism, still informs the film's design. The visual and operational elements reflect a contemporary understanding of naval environments, the layout of spaces, the integration of technology, and the behavior of personnel. These details contribute to a sense of temporal authenticity, situating the story within a recognizable modern context. However, the film does take deliberate liberties where necessary. Narrative pacing often requires compression of time, simplification of processes, and amplification of conflict. These adjustments are not inaccuracies in the traditional sense, but rather strategic modifications that enhance storytelling efficiency. The key is that these liberties do not break the internal logic of the film, allowing it to remain coherent and believable. Another layer of realism emerges through the psychological dimension. The film's portrayal of stress, doubt, and decision-making under pressure aligns closely with real-world observations of human behavior in high-stakes environments. This psychological authenticity often carries more weight than procedural precision, as it directly influences how the audience interprets the story. Importantly, the film avoids over-explaining its technical elements. Instead of relying on exposition, it allows the audience to infer meaning through context and observation. This approach respects the viewer's intelligence while maintaining narrative momentum. It also aligns with educational value, as it encourages active engagement rather than passive consumption. From an educational perspective, Mutiny offers insight into how systems function and fail. It demonstrates that accuracy is not just about detail, but about understanding underlying principles, how authority operates, how information flows, and how human factors influence outcomes. This makes the film relevant not only as entertainment, but as a case study in organizational behavior and decision science. In essence, the film achieves a balance between factual foundation and dramatic interpretation. It does not aim to replicate reality perfectly, but to capture its essence, the tension, the uncertainty, and the complexity of systems under pressure. By doing so, it creates a world that feels both believable and compelling, inviting the audience to explore the thin line between order and collapse. When we move into the visual architecture of Mutiny, the film begins to reveal how cinematography is not simply about capturing images, but about engineering perception. Every frame is constructed with intention, translating psychological tension into visual data that the audience can subconsciously interpret. This is where optics, geometry, and light converge to create a measurable emotional response, turning abstract feelings into structured visual language. The film's use of composition is particularly deliberate. Characters are frequently positioned within confined frames, often surrounded by structural elements such as walls, corridors, and equipment. These elements act as visual constraints, reinforcing the idea of limited freedom and controlled movement. Symmetry is used sparingly, often reserved for moments of authority and order, while asymmetry dominates during periods of instability, subtly signaling a shift in the system's balance. Lens selection plays a critical role in shaping this visual narrative. Wider lenses are used to exaggerate spatial relationships, making environments feel both expansive and restrictive at the same time. This creates a paradoxical sense of openness and confinement, reflecting the character's psychological state. In contrast, tighter focal lengths compress space, bringing subjects closer together and intensifying interpersonal tension. This dynamic use of focal length allows the film to modulate emotional distance with precision. Depth of field is another key variable in the film's visual engineering. By selectively isolating subjects against blurred backgrounds, the cinematography directs viewer attention while simultaneously suggesting isolation. In moments of heightened tension, shallow focus can create a sense of disconnection, as if the surrounding world is fading away. Conversely, deeper focus reintroduces environmental context, grounding the characters within the system they are struggling against. Lighting design operates as both a functional and symbolic tool. The film relies heavily on low-key lighting, using shadows to create depth and ambiguity. Light sources are often motivated by the environment, screens, overhead fixtures, or practical lamps, which enhances realism while maintaining control over contrast. The interplay between light and shadow becomes a visual representation of knowledge and uncertainty, with illuminated areas suggesting clarity and darkness implying doubt. Color science further refines this visual language. The film appears to favor a restrained palette dominated by cool tones, blues, grays, and muted greens, which evoke a sense of detachment and control. Occasional shifts toward warmer tones are used strategically, often during moments of emotional vulnerability or conflict. This controlled use of color creates a visual rhythm, guiding the audience's emotional response without overt signaling. Camera movement is handled with equal precision. Rather than relying on constant motion, the film uses movement sparingly, ensuring that each shift carries meaning. Slow, deliberate tracking shots create a sense of inevitability, as if the narrative is moving toward an unavoidable outcome. Static shots, on the other hand, emphasize stillness and tension, forcing the audience to sit within the moment. This balance between motion and stillness contributes to the film's overall pacing. Framing choices also reflect the film's thematic concerns. Characters are often placed off-center, leaving negative space within the frame. This space acts as a visual metaphor for uncertainty, the unknown variables that influence decision-making. In moments of confrontation, framing becomes tighter and more symmetrical, reducing that space and intensifying focus. These shifts are subtle, yet they play a significant role in shaping viewer perception. The film's use of perspective further enhances its visual storytelling. By alternating between objective and subjective viewpoints, it allows the audience to experience events both as observers and as participants. This dual perspective increases engagement, as viewers are not only watching the story unfold, but also interpreting it from within the system. Environmental design integrates seamlessly with cinematography, ensuring that every visual element contributes to the overall composition. Textures, materials, and spatial arrangements are chosen to reflect the film's tone, creating a cohesive visual ecosystem. This integration reduces visual noise, allowing the audience to focus on the narrative without distraction. Dynamic range, enabled by modern digital sensors, ensures that detail is preserved across varying lighting conditions. This allows the film to maintain visual clarity even in low-light environments, which is essential for a story that relies heavily on subtle visual cues. The ability to capture both highlights and shadows with precision enhances the film's realism and depth. In essence, the cinematography of Mutiny operates as a form of visual engineering, a disciplined system where every choice is intentional and every element contributes to the narrative. It demonstrates how images can be constructed not just to be seen, but to be felt, transforming visual data into emotional experience with remarkable efficiency. When Mutiny transitions into the domain of sound design and music production, the film reveals another layer of engineering, one that operates not through images, but through vibration, frequency, and spatial perception. Sound here is not an accessory to the visuals. It is a parallel system designed to shape emotion with precision. This is where audio becomes architecture, constructing an invisible environment that the audience inhabits as deeply as the physical setting on screen. The foundation of this system lies in the film's approach to dynamic range. Instead of maintaining a constant level of intensity, Mutiny carefully modulates sound levels to create contrast. Quiet moments are truly quiet, allowing even the smallest sounds to carry weight, while louder sequences are controlled rather than overwhelming. This deliberate management of volume ensures that every auditory element retains clarity and purpose, enhancing overall immersion. Ambient sound design plays a crucial role in establishing the film's atmosphere. The subtle hum of machinery, the distant echo of footsteps, the faint vibration of metal structures, these elements form a continuous sonic backdrop that reinforces the setting. These sounds are not random. They are carefully layered and balanced to create a sense of presence. Even in the absence of dialogue, the environment feels alive, contributing to the film's psychological tension. Dialogue recording and processing are handled with equal precision. Voices are kept clean and intelligible, yet they retain a natural quality that reflects the environment. Slight reverberation or spatial effects are used to situate characters within their surroundings, ensuring that the audio aligns with the visual space. This attention to detail prevents dissonance between what the audience sees and hears, maintaining a cohesive sensory experience. One of the most effective techniques used in the film is the strategic use of silence. Moments where sound drops away entirely are not empty. They are charged with anticipation. Silence becomes a tool for focusing attention, amplifying the emotional weight of the scene. In these instances, the absence of sound is as powerful as its presence, creating a dynamic interplay that keeps the audience engaged. The musical score operates with restraint, avoiding excessive orchestration in favor of subtle, atmospheric compositions. Instead of dominating the scene, the music supports it, often blending seamlessly with ambient sounds. This approach allows the score to enhance emotion without drawing attention to itself, maintaining the film's grounded tone. The music acts as an undercurrent, guiding the audience's emotional response without overt signaling. From a technical perspective, the film likely utilizes advanced digital audio workstations, such as Avid Pro Tools, for mixing and mastering. These systems allow for precise control over individual audio elements, enabling sound designers to adjust levels, frequencies, and spatial positioning with high accuracy. This level of control is essential for achieving the film's nuanced soundscape. Spatial audio design further enhances immersion by creating a sense of direction and movement. Sounds are positioned within a three-dimensional field, allowing the audience to perceive their origin and trajectory. This technique is particularly effective in confined environments, where subtle shifts in sound can significantly influence perception. It transforms the auditory experience into a navigable space, mirroring the physical environment of the film. Foley work, the recreation of everyday sounds, adds another layer of realism. Footsteps, clothing movement, and object interactions are recorded and synchronized with the visuals, ensuring that every action has a corresponding auditory presence. This attention to detail reinforces the film's authenticity, making the environment feel tangible and immediate. The integration of sound and music is carefully managed to avoid conflict. Instead of competing for attention, these elements are balanced to complement each other. Music may recede when dialogue becomes critical, while ambient sounds may fade during key emotional moments. This dynamic balancing ensures that the audience's focus is always directed where it needs to be. From an economic perspective, sound design represents a relatively cost-efficient way to enhance production value. While it requires skilled professionals and advanced tools, it does not demand the same level of expenditure as large-scale visual effects. Yet its impact on audience perception is profound, making it one of the most effective investments in the filmmaking process. In essence, the sound design and music production of Mutiny function as an invisible framework, a carefully constructed system that supports and enhances the visual narrative. It demonstrates how audio, when treated with the same level of precision as image, can elevate a film from a visual experience to a fully immersive environment. As Mutiny moves from production into the marketplace, the film transforms into a data-driven campaign where creativity is guided by analytics and audience behavior. Marketing here is not simply about visibility. It is about precision targeting, ensuring that every promotional asset reaches the most valuable segment of viewers. This is where storytelling meets algorithmic distribution, and where success is measured not just in impressions, but in conversion and retention. The foundation of the campaign begins with trailer strategy, which acts as the film's primary acquisition tool. Multiple trailer versions are likely developed, each tailored to highlight different aspects of the film: tension, psychology, authority conflict, and then tested across platforms. This A/B testing approach allows marketers to analyze engagement metrics such as click-through rate, watch duration, and audience retention, refining the campaign in real time to maximize efficiency. Demographic targeting plays a critical role in shaping the film's positioning. Rather than appealing to the broadest possible audience, Mutiny is strategically aligned with viewers who value intellectual and psychological depth. This includes audiences interested in finance, technology, leadership, and decision-making, segments that are highly attractive to premium advertisers. By focusing on these groups, the film increases its effective CPM, improving overall revenue potential. Digital platforms serve as the primary distribution channels for marketing content. Social media, video platforms, and search engines are used to deliver targeted ads based on user behavior and interests. Algorithms analyze viewing patterns, search queries, and engagement history to identify potential viewers, ensuring that promotional content is delivered with high relevance. This reduces wasted impressions and increases the likelihood of conversion. Influencer partnerships further extend the film's reach. Instead of traditional celebrity endorsements, the campaign may collaborate with content creators who specialize in film analysis, psychology, or technology. These creators bring an existing audience that aligns with the film's thematic focus, allowing for more authentic engagement. This approach not only increases visibility, but also enhances credibility within niche communities. Social listening tools are used to monitor audience in real time. By analyzing comments, shares, and sentiment across platforms, marketers can identify trends and adjust their strategy accordingly. Positive feedback can be amplified, while areas of confusion or criticism can be addressed through additional content. This feedback loop ensures that the campaign remains responsive and adaptive. Search engine optimization, SEO, is another key component of the strategy. Keywords related to the film's themes, authority, psychology, decision-making, are integrated into titles, descriptions, and metadata to improve discoverability. This is particularly important for long-tail engagement, where viewers continue to discover the film through organic search long after its initial release. Timing of release is carefully calculated to maximize impact. The film may be positioned within a window that avoids direct competition with major franchise releases, allowing it to capture attention without being overshadowed. This strategic scheduling increases the likelihood of strong opening performance, which in turn influences downstream metrics such as word of mouth and streaming demand. Data analytics continue to play a role even after the film's release. Box office performance, audience demographics, and engagement metrics are analyzed to inform ongoing marketing efforts. If certain segments show higher engagement, additional resources can be allocated to target those audiences more aggressively. This iterative approach ensures that the campaign evolves in response to real-world data. From a financial perspective, marketing efficiency is measured through metrics such as cost per mil CPM, cost per acquisition, CPA, and return on ad spend, ROAS. By optimizing these metrics, the campaign ensures that each dollar spent generates maximum impact. This is particularly important for a film like Mutiny, where the target audience is more selective but also more valuable. The integration of marketing and analytics reflects a broader trend in the film industry, the shift toward data-informed creativity. Decisions are no longer based solely on intuition. They are supported by measurable insights that guide strategy and execution. This approach reduces uncertainty and increases the likelihood of success in an increasingly competitive market. In essence, the marketing strategy of Mutiny operates as a continuous feedback system, where data informs decisions and decisions generate new data. It demonstrates how modern film campaigns are not static, but dynamic processes that evolve over time, ensuring that the film remains visible, relevant, and financially viable across its entire life cycle. As Mutiny completes its journey from production to public reception, the film enters a phase where its value is no longer determined solely by internal design, but by external validation. This is a domain of critical reception and cultural positioning, where reviews, audience response, and industry recognition collectively shape the film's long-term trajectory. At this stage, perception becomes currency, and reputation becomes a measurable asset. Early critical response is likely to focus on the film's disciplined tone and psychological depth. Reviewers tend to evaluate such projects based on coherence, thematic consistency, and the effectiveness of tension building. In this context, Mutiny's restrained approach may be seen as both its greatest strength and its most significant risk. While some critics will appreciate its intellectual rigor, others may question its accessibility, creating a spectrum of reception that reflects the film's deliberate positioning. Aggregated review metrics, such as critic scores and audience ratings, serve as quantitative indicators of reception. These metrics influence not only public perception, but also distribution opportunities and marketing strategies. A strong critical consensus can amplify visibility, while mixed reviews may require strategic repositioning to highlight the film's strengths. In financial terms, these metrics act as signals, guiding both consumers and stakeholders. Awards consideration introduces another layer of value. Films that demonstrate technical excellence, strong performances, and thematic depth often attract attention from industry bodies. Categories such as cinematography, sound design, and editing are particularly relevant for a film like Mutiny, where technical precision is a defining feature. Recognition in these areas can enhance the film's prestige, increasing its appeal to both audiences and distributors. From a branding perspective, awards and nominations function as quality certification. They signal to potential viewers that the film meets a certain standard of excellence, reducing perceived risk and encouraging engagement. This is especially important in competitive markets, where audiences are presented with a wide range of options. A recognized film stands out, gaining an advantage in both theatrical and streaming environments. Audience reception, while often more variable than critical response, plays a crucial role in determining long-term success. Word of mouth, social media discussions, and viewer ratings contribute to the film's ongoing visibility. For a film like Mutiny, which relies on psychological engagement, audience interpretation becomes part of the experience. Discussions around themes, decisions, and outcomes extend the film's life cycle beyond its runtime. Streaming performance adds another dimension to the film's legacy. Platforms evaluate content based on metrics, such as completion rate, repeat viewing, and subscriber retention. A film that encourages analysis and discussion is likely to perform well in these areas, as viewers return to explore its nuances. This sustained engagement translates into long-term revenue, reinforcing the film's financial viability. Cultural impact is perhaps the most intangible yet significant aspect of the film's legacy. If Mutiny resonates with audiences on a deeper level, it may influence how similar stories are told in the future. Its approach to tension, structure, and thematic exploration could serve as a reference point for other filmmakers, contributing to the evolution of the genre. This influence, while difficult to quantify, represents a form of intellectual capital. Lifetime revenue projections take into account not only initial box office performance, but also extended monetization channels. These include streaming rights, international licensing, and potential re-releases. A film with strong critical and audience reception is more likely to sustain these revenue streams over time, ensuring that its financial impact extends well beyond its initial release window. Collectibles and ancillary markets, though less central, still contribute to the overall valuation. Limited edition releases, digital ownership, and special features can generate additional revenue while also strengthening the film's connection with its audience. These elements enhance the film's brand, creating a sense of permanence and ownership. Importantly, the film's legacy is not static. It evolves over time as new audiences discover it and as cultural contexts shift. A film that may initially receive mixed reviews can later be reevaluated and appreciated for its innovation. This dynamic nature of reception underscores the importance of long-term thinking in both creative and financial planning. In essence, Mutiny's critical reception and legacy represent the final stage of its value creation process. It is where artistic intent meets public interpretation, and where financial outcomes are influenced by perception as much as performance. By navigating this phase effectively, the film can secure not only immediate success, but enduring relevance. There is something quietly profound about systems, how they are built with precision, maintained with discipline, and yet remain vulnerable to the most human of variables. Mutiny, in its final reflection, is not simply a story about rebellion, but a meditation on the delicate balance between structure and humanity. It invites us to consider how much of our world is governed by systems we trust, and how fragile that trust can become when tested by uncertainty. What the film ultimately reveals is that no system, no matter how well designed, can fully account for the complexity of human thought and emotion. Protocols can guide action, but they cannot eliminate doubt. Hierarchies can enforce order, but they cannot guarantee belief. This gap between design and reality is where tension lives, and where the film finds its deepest meaning. From a financial perspective, Mutiny stands as a carefully calibrated experiment in modern cinema. It demonstrates how a film can balance budget discipline with creative ambition, using contained environments and performance-driven storytelling to maximize ROI potential. Its strategy reflects a broader shift in the industry, where efficiency and precision are as important as scale and spectacle. Technologically, the film showcases how advanced tools can be used not to overwhelm, but to refine. Cameras, lenses, editing systems, and sound design are all employed with restraint, ensuring that technology serves the story rather than overshadowing it. This alignment between technology and narrative is what allows the film to maintain both authenticity and impact. Psychologically, the film offers a nuanced exploration of decision-making under pressure. It examines how individuals navigate uncertainty, how they balance logic and emotion, and how they respond when the systems they rely on begin to falter. These insights extend beyond the screen, reflecting patterns that exist in real-world organizations, leadership structures, and human relationships. The film's greatest strength lies in its ability to integrate these elements, art, technology, and capital, into a cohesive whole. It does not treat them as separate components, but as interconnected systems that influence one another. This holistic approach is what gives the film its depth, allowing it to function simultaneously as entertainment, analysis, and case study. As the narrative concludes, there is no simple resolution, no definitive answer to the questions it raises. Instead, the film leaves us with a sense of ongoing inquiry, a recognition that systems are not static, but evolving entities shaped by the people within them. This open-endedness is not a weakness, but a reflection of reality, where clarity is often elusive and outcomes are rarely absolute. In terms of legacy, Mutiny positions itself as a film that values intellectual engagement over immediate gratification. It may not seek to dominate through spectacle, but it aims to endure through relevance. By encouraging analysis and discussion, it extends its impact beyond the screen, becoming part of a broader conversation about how we understand authority, responsibility, and change. For the audience, the experience is both immersive and reflective. It draws them into a controlled environment, then gradually reveals the complexities beneath its surface. In doing so, it transforms viewing into participation, asking not just what happens, but why it happens and what it means. From an industry standpoint, the film represents a model for sustainable filmmaking, one that prioritizes efficiency, precision, and long-term value. It demonstrates that success is not solely defined by scale, but by the ability to align creative vision with economic reality. This alignment is what allows a project to thrive in an increasingly competitive landscape. Ultimately, Mutiny is a reminder that cinema, at its best, is a synthesis of disciplines. It is where storytelling meets engineering, where emotion meets economics, and where individual perspective meets collective experience. It is a space where ideas can be explored, challenged, and understood through the language of film. And as we step away from this exploration, we are left not with answers, but with awareness, and understanding that behind every system lies a human element, and behind every decision, a story waiting to be told. If you found this deep dive meaningful, my literature-loving friends, consider liking and subscribing so we can keep decoding the business and beauty of cinema together.